For a social media executive overview, this will actually be one of the shorter trainings that we're going through in this particular course. And the reason for that is that there actually is not a significant value to just standard social media management for most organizations. So when we're thinking about how much we invest in social media, do we have a full-time social media person? Are we paying a lot of money to an outsourced agency for this? Usually, I'm going to say about 90% of the time, maybe even 95% of the time, the answer is that we should be limiting the investment. All a social media person is doing most of the time is just creating and posting content to your Facebook pages, your X pages, your LinkedIn pages, etc. There needs to be a bit of time invested there. We need some presence. We want people to see our content. But what's really important to understand with social media is that, again, these platforms are made to make money, and that is done through advertisements. So they are not going to, by design, give you a lot of impressions and a lot of reach for what you post for free. So on average, the reach that you get with any content that's going to your page is around 3% across various platforms. So that means that's 3% of your followers. So if you have 100 followers on your page, you're only going to get about 3 views. Not a great ROI, right? Do we want to be paying someone full time to just post once or maybe twice a day to have a couple people see it? And then in addition to that, most of what goes out in organic posts in terms of who sees it are existing page followers. And your existing page followers are usually people that are staff, employees, and then sometimes they are customers, patients of your services. But they're people that have already started to use your services. So if there's value in getting in front of people who you are trying to get to use services again or have follow-up or additional services, there can be a little bit of value there, but it's not going to be significant. Remember, from a paid media social standpoint, we're only paying like CPMs of anywhere from $5 to $60 to reach 1,000 people. So that would be if we hired a social media manager at say $20 an hour, they would have to do 3 hours of work and they're only going to reach a handful of people. Like, we're just not getting the same value as we do from paid media campaigns. So our personal recommendation is always for clients to really limit their investments here. If you're going to pay a social media or a marketing agency or a firm, a $1,500 a month agency fee will generally cover it. And that saves you a lot of money. It's a lot cheaper than hiring a full-time person. So limit your investment here because it's just not a significant return. When you're thinking about your social media strategy, again, think about what you want to see. Why are you following certain organizations and their pages? Probably because you work there. You're probably not going and following a lot of businesses on Facebook or X or things like that. Some people follow business profiles for discounts. Right? Why are you going to follow a Starbucks page or a McDonald's page? It's because you want a discount, and by following their page, you might get offers that people who aren't following it are not. Now, that doesn't apply to healthcare providers. We're not providing discounts. What we're running on our profile is stuff that is hopefully valuable for the people that are following our pages. And that's what they want to see. They don't want to see salesy pages. They want to see you constantly offering or recommending your services or your products. They want something that's useful for them. So when we think of a social media strategy, we think of what we call a 70-20-10, meaning 70% of the content that we're posting is just a value add to your potential followers. What is educational for them? What is helpful for them? And it's you showcasing your knowledge and your expertise and kind of filtering and looking at all the content out there and saying, hey, here's something you should be thinking about. That can be original content. That can be content that you're aggregating. It can be content you're sharing from other non-competitor websites. But 70% of your content should be some kind of value add for the audience. That's going to make me want to stay a follower. It's going to make me want to maybe check out your page from time to time. 20% of your content should be value add, but specifically related to you and your organization. Are you running a CEU event? Are you running some kind of training or presentation that's open to the community that would be of interest to community members? Are you providing a blog piece that's educational? Something that you're doing that is promotional in nature, but still very focused on providing value to your follower. Webinar would be another good example. infographics sometimes if they're actually useful information and not just infographics to be infographics. Then 10% should be directly promotional. Hey, we're having an event and we want you guys to come in, and it's the event to get you signed up for services. Or we're having special services or new services that we're offering, or here's the price of our services, give us a call today. Anything that's directly promotional where there isn't significant value to the follower outside of just paying you, that should be limited to 10% of the total posts. Now, how often are you posting? That's completely up to you. We recommend a couple posts per week. Again, there's not a high return on investment for being really present on social media for most organizations. So for that reason, you can post every day, it's fine. You can post every other day, it's fine. As long as there's some kind of active presence, that's all you're really looking for. So based on your total number of posts, let's say you're posting 10 times a month, 7 of those posts would be value add. 2 of those posts would be value add, but directly related to some kind of content that you're providing or information like an event that's relevant to them. And then 10% is going to be directly promotional, or sorry, one of those 10 posts. Post a couple times a week on average, that's usually enough. Who should be posting? You want to be thinking about a strategy and actually encouraging your staff to post, because they're going to have a lot higher value. Would you rather see a Facebook post from your company or from you? Same thing's going to happen with your staff and your employees. People are much more likely to take action or be engaged with people that they know versus organizations a lot of the time. So it's very smart to have a company promotional strategy to get your staff to be active in promoting you on these channels. And if you think about that, let's say we've got 10 employees or we've got 100 employees. If we make a post on Facebook and every single one of our employees shares that post, well, that actually gives us some pretty significant reach. And the way that the algorithm works for these platforms, a personal profile actually gets larger organic reach than a company or a business profile. Not by a lot. You're going from like 3% to like 5%. It's not significant most of the time, but you're still going to get better reach with an employee profile. So this is why for executives, I strongly encourage executives to have a strong presence on channels where their audiences are, especially professional channels like LinkedIn. Do you have relevant information that you can share? Can you provide guidance around your areas of expertise and the services or products that you deliver? That has a lot of value on LinkedIn, and you're going to get farther reach. And there's obviously a direct correlation between the reputation of employees and the reputations of the organization. So think through, do we have an employee engagement strategy where they're actively either sharing company content that's directly from the page that your social media team or agency is creating, or they're making their own posts if you're comfortable with that? Do you have, again, brand guidelines in place? Is the team trained on those? You don't want them posting willy-nilly sometimes. But if you've hired them, you should have enough trust in them to hopefully not make a too big of a snafu online. It's going to happen from time to time, but the same thing happens with regular employees, right? Regular employees doing their normal jobs make mistakes, just like you might have employees make mistakes on social media from time to time. At the end of the day, that's part of running an organization. We have that level of risk. That really comes down to hiring. It comes down to training. It comes down to guidance. So if we provide all 3 of those, then we should be able to trust our employees to be active on our behalfs on our social media channels or on their social media channels where they're recommending us. And again, like fallout here tends to be pretty low, especially if you're a small organization. If someone does make a snafu, you can get that pulled down. They can delete the content. Your team can delete the content on your pages. And because the reach, the number of impressions is usually so small, not too many people are seeing it anyway. Where should you be? Do we want to be on TikTok? Do we want to be on Facebook? Do we want to be on LinkedIn? Again, it comes down to your audience. Where is your audience? What platforms are they usually using? And then another factor to consider is your ability to create content. So if I think about TikTok, that's very video heavy. Same thing with YouTube, very video heavy. So do we have the internal time to make a lot of videos? If we don't, then we probably do not want to invest in a TikTok or a YouTube strategy. If we want to have a full-time videographer, or if we want to pay more to an agency for them to create regular video content, then it might be worth it for us to invest in a video heavy channel. Also, there's just a level of professionalism that's needed. We can be a little bit more informal on platforms like Facebook or X. We need to be a little bit more formal on platforms like LinkedIn. If we look at a platform like Pinterest, that's very graphics heavy. So we need graphics design heavily involved in those channels. So we want to think about, again, there's a very low ROI for the vast majority of just organic social media posting. So does it make sense for us to invest in a graphic designer or videography? If not, then we probably don't want to have channels for us. We just want to focus on the channels where we're active. So I'm mentioning here that for the most part, social media is not overly valuable. It can be really valuable if you are really good at exploring partnerships. And so this can be for PR outreach, or it can be for relationships with other organizations. I'll give a simple example that people might not be familiar with. So if you look at X, they often have what used to be called Twitter chats or X chats. You might be familiar with like an Ask Me Anything from Reddit. And so an individual comes on to a Reddit, a subreddit, a group, and then they provide answers to questions, and those get promoted. And there's a lot of engagement that happens from that. So on X, there's actually a lot of providers and organizations that will host a Twitter chat or an X chat, and they'll have it on a topic that's relevant to the organization on how to do your job better, or how to support employees, or how to support patients, whatever the situation might be. And those happen regularly on a weekly basis sometimes, where people join those, or they're one-offs like an AMA on Reddit. If you are actively involved in those kind of communities where you're taking a live role and engaging with people in real time, that can be a significant value, especially if you have something really worth saying and you're contributing to those conversations in a meaningful way that can differentiate you from other providers. It builds a lot of awareness. It builds trust. Another simple example would be like Facebook groups. So you could have an individual employee go, you can't go to a Facebook group as a company. They don't allow that. But you can go to a Facebook group as your individual Facebook profile, but you could be acting on behalf of your company or responding as a representative, let's say. And so if we go into a mom's group, or if we go into a patient support group, there could be a lot of value for us in obviously connecting with potential patients there. Now, the key with all of these strategies is we're not going to be promotional. We're not going in there and trying to sell our services. Again, always go back to this idea of 10 people in the room and you're in real life. Do you want to walk into a room and do you want someone to start shouting the name of their business and handing out business cards and say, hey, come get our services, come get our services? No, it's really annoying. It's really frustrating. So you're not going to do that online. You're not going to go into a group and just start promoting your services. If people have questions, your answer should not be, hey, we provide XYZ service. You should come and get it from us. You should have some kind of value added answer. If you do this really well, and sometimes we'll do it on behalf of clients, or we'll have clients and we'll train them to do it. You have your staff members go in, you just provide a lot of value in these groups or in these X chats, and people will naturally start to seek you out for solutions to their problems or to meet their needs and desires. You're naturally, through sharing expertise and showing that you're a quality provider or an employee of a quality provider, you're someone that I want to seek services from, you'll naturally attract people. And so that's a really, really valuable way to explore social media platforms, but it requires a lot more investment. You're going to have to pay an agency a lot more, or you are going to need a full-time employee to be actively engaging on a regular basis in all of these groups across different platforms. Now, you can also partner with organizations as well as just seeking out individuals. So maybe you're running an X chat and you partner with another related healthcare agency, or maybe there's a nonprofit agency or a government agency. And this can extend to not just commenting and engaging in a particular platform or a chat, but maybe you want to do something like a shared video, like you want to do an interview. And we say, okay, we'll take our CEO and their CEO, and we'll have them do a conversation on this topic that's really relevant to patients, or that's really relevant to our community referral partners. And by having this conversation, then both of us are going to share, obviously, on our social media channels. and then hopefully that gets shared out and that gets shared out, etc. But by exploring a partnership with an organization, it can be very valuable. A simple way to do this that we'll often do is combine CEU events. So maybe we'll have one provider host the CEU event, and then we'll have a partner provider that is the one providing the trainer, or vice versa. And both of us are promoting that on our social media channels. So that can be a valuable way to think about, how do we make the online, offline, and drive value and conversation and additional follow-up that way. So what data are we looking at in terms of ROI? Again, there's not a lot here for the most part, unless you're really building these active partnerships and very, very active online in a one-to-one manner that's not just, pushing content out. So you're looking at engagement. Are people commenting? Are they liking? Are they reacting to the post? That shows us that the content we're putting out has value to our followers for that particular page. And then you're just looking at impressions and views. So we're not going to get inquiries off of our social media efforts, 99.9% of the time. We're not going to see direct patient, admissions. Again, most people that are following your page are probably staff or previous patients who have already used your services. So there's just this small number of people that you might be reaching on these platforms that would drive any other kind of behavior. So that's it. You're looking at engagement, impressions, and views. What kind of tactics can we apply to social media? So we talked through some of that in the strategy. You absolutely have to have brand guidelines. Again, if we're going to have employees do this, or I'm not just talking about like multiple employees, but even your internal marketing team or your agency that you're hiring, what is the standard? What is our tone? What is our voice? What words do we use? Even something simple like should be in the brand guidelines. Do you guys refer to patients as patients? Or are they clients, or are they guests? What kind of name are you using to talk about the people that you serve? That should be in your brand guidelines. They should have references to the logos that you have, the fonts you want to use. You want to create a certain level of standardization so that when people are out there communicating on your behalf in your name, that there is a certain level of consistency to that. Contests and challenges is something that you'll see more in like the individual coaching space. You don't see this a lot from brands or organizations as much these days, but they are ways where you can potentially try to get engagement. So you might run a contest where you say, hey, everyone who comments on this post and provides an answer to X question gets entered into a raffle for a free Starbucks gift card. Or we could have a challenge, and maybe we're focused on improving the health of our community. And so we want to have a push-up challenge or a running challenge or a pull-up challenge and say, hey, why don't you go out next week and let's see how many push-ups you can do or how far you can run. And we want everyone just to share their positive successes. So having these kind of challenges or contests is a way to try to build engagement and do more than that 3% reach that you'll get with a standard post. If you are actively getting people to comment and respond and share, then that's going to drive your organic push, because every single time that someone comments or shares, that tells the algorithm that, hey, this is interesting to people, so we'll show it to more people. It's still never going to show it to a ton, just because, again, these are pay-to-play platforms. They are not looking to give you a lot of free views, but the more engaging it is, the more involvement you have. And then again, how can we move the online offline? Having a contest, it's a way for us to actually engage with our community and provide them something and sort of a conversation. Same thing with challenges. If I'm having a running challenge, if I'm having a dieting or a healthcare or some kind of like nutrition challenge, these are really great ways to get people to start engaging in real time and start conversations. Hashtags is a question that I get all the time from executives. What is the point of a hashtag? And the reality is that there really isn't any anymore. So even Instagram, for example, is deprecating hashtags. They're not something that is used by the algorithm of the system. So back in the day, hashtags were a way for you to kind of tell the algorithm what the post was about. But nowadays, the AI is so good that it can figure out who the post is for and what it's about without having a hashtag in there. So those lack value. They start to look spammy. And then in addition to that, you used to be able to click a hashtag and Facebook or X or TikTok or whatever will show you all of the content under that hashtag. Now that has almost no value as a local healthcare provider. So if I click on the hashtag for mental health counseling. I'm going to see every single post across the entire world on that. Does it matter if we create content with that hashtag and then someone from New Delhi, someone from New York, someone from Amsterdam sees our post? No, like there's not value there. Every once in a while, you're able to find local hashtags. So cool in Seattle, or keep Asheville weird. So you can get something local. So if you can find a relevant hashtag to your service or product that's really local, that's fine to include. That makes sense because then you're going to have relevant searchers. But for the most part, people, one, they don't really like hashtags. They look spammy. Two, the algorithms aren't using them anymore. And then three, the vast majority of hashtags are not going to be focused on your target audience. Also, a comment there. Sometimes you'll still get old media agencies that want you to create like a unique hashtag for your organization. Highly recommend against that. Again, why would anyone click that if it's just related to your organization? Almost nobody is. It's going to appear spammy. It's a waste of time and effort. Really don't encourage organizations to try to create their own hashtags. It's just not going to do a whole lot for you. You should be linking content a lot of the time. Remember that 70, 20, 10 strategy we talked about? So a lot of times you're linking to other people's content. 20% of the time you're linking to your own content. But just keep in mind, when you link content, it actually does push the algorithm reach down a little bit, because what do these platforms want to do? They want to keep people on the platform. And so if you're linking off the platform, that's a little bit less valuable to these providers. And so you don't always want to be linking content. You'll see it if you test it, that content that doesn't have a link gets a little bit more reach. And again, we're talking about the difference of like 1% here. So is it something that we really need to strategize over? Not really. Virality is another really common question that I get with executives. Like, how do we make something go viral? And the answer, there is no formula to it, right? Viral content is engaging content that people want to share. And of course, we're trying to make that all the time. But I can tell you that, having put up millions of social media posts, the percentage that we've had go viral is certainly under 1%. And often you can't tell why it went viral. It can be just this one post that's something about it, clicked with people, and they just shared it all over the place. Because it's such a small probability that it's going to happen, and it happens so rarely, there's no formula to put in place that's going to make something viral. It's not a valuable strategy. It's not something that you're trying to bank on. Most of the time you're going to get 3% of your audience to see something. And so it's going to be a very small number. Every once in a while, you might get 1 million views, 2 million views. Great. When that happens, definitely capitalize on it. Make sure you take that content and use it in your ad campaigns. Make sure you're commenting and engaging with any people that are then engaging with that content. So you want to make sure you make the most of viral content. But you should not have a strategy where you're trying to design viral content every day, because it's a very, very small probability that that's going to happen, especially in your fields, right? You think about your service line, you think about your products. How many people are really excited to share content related to your services and products? Most of the time, we don't have services or products that are going to engage and get people super excited about what we're putting out there. Group participation, again, is something that is really, really valuable. And so not just being involved in like Facebook groups or these X chats and things like that, but also think about it from a PR standpoint. Can you reach out to journalists? So on X, there's a lot of journalists. They're always kind of fishing for stories. And so if you're a PR agency, or if you're a marketing agency that engages in PR, or you have an internal team that's really good with PR, X is an excellent place to get to know journalists and pitch them stories. And again, that's one-to-one outreach, right? You're not putting a post on X and hoping that a journalist will see it. That could happen once in a blue moon. You've got content. You start talking to journalists, build a relationship with them, figure out what kind of content they're looking for, what stories they're working on. Does something that you have expertise in connect to their stories, and then you can pitch them on something. So X is an excellent place to build PR, but this is a whole strategy. It's a whole skill set. It's not something that your average staff member is probably going to be able to do. Just realize that it is a tactic that could be used if you want to invest more heavily in one-to-one management of your channels. What is the psychology? What are people looking for on these channels? Most of the time, they're just looking for presence. People will check out your Facebook profile, your X profile, just to see, are you an active business? Do you seem to care about your organization to the extent that you're at least posting a couple times a week? That's what most people are looking for. They're not going to scrutinize your content. They're not going to go through 2 weeks or 2 months of your old posts. They're really just going to look and see if you're active. So presence is one of the value components of being on social media. And then they're looking for a benefit. That's why we talk about the 70-20-10 strategy. 70% of the time we want to add value. So is there any useful information on this page that's helpful to me? If it's really useful, I might follow the page. I might like the page. Otherwise, I'm probably just checking for the presence. And then the psychology of community recognition is great. So if you've got patients that have great success stories, that's excellent to post to social media if they're willing. Same thing with staff. So do you have staff that have a success story or they're really happy to share positive successes they've had with patients? Great. Put that into your social media posts. Community recognition actually tends to get a lot of engagement and a lot more reach than standard posts. So if you can bring in your employees, if you can bring in patients, people in the community, that's a great thing that people want to see and that they're looking for on social media platforms. FAQs, how much time should we invest there? Hopefully I've made it clear that you want to invest very little time here. Have a presence, maybe do a little bit of engagement, but you don't want to be focusing a lot of time and money. And that goes for your agencies as well. Social posts are very visible. The CEO, the executive team is probably following the company Facebook page. And probably one of the few people that see the Facebook posts on a regular basis. Again, you're not getting a lot of reach here, but the algorithms do see what you look at. And so if you're engaging with your own content, the algorithm recognizes that and you're going to be the one that sees that post. So if you have 100 followers and we're getting a 3% reach rate and 3 people, so that means 3 people are going to see your post, the CEO always checks the post, they're always going to be one of those 3 people. That's just how the algorithm works. So you are much more likely to see your own content, even though 97% of your page followers are not viewing that content. So again, there's not a huge need to focus on this. If you've got a spelling error in the content, if you've got messaging that's not great, tell someone, get it fixed, but it's not the end of the world. There's just not a huge ROI because not a lot of people are viewing this content. So don't invest a lot of money on this. Don't invest in an agency that's charging $10,000 for social media so you have fancy graphics and fancy videos, because it's, for 99% of organizations, not going to be a value add. Should we lighten up our voice? This is a question I bring up often just because we get it now, especially with executives that are used to a more bland corporate style from the past, and things have changed where we're much more engaging. We have a voice, we have an opinion. So Wendy's is a great example. It's very snarky, it's very sarcastic. You probably do not want to go in that direction. As a healthcare provider, that's not a voice that makes sense to us. If you want to have active engagement, could possibly be worth it. But are we going to sit there and explore social media, me commenting and making snarky comments in other people's posts all the time? Probably not. Doesn't go a long way for us. And then also a comment I always make here is, are we matching the brand to an expected result? So if you think of Wendy's, are you more likely to buy hamburgers and fries from Wendy's because they have a snarky social media profile? The answer is no. They get some reach out of it, right? People like to share their posts, and you're seeing Wendy's, and so you're getting some, let's say, some higher levels of engagement and free. You're still paying for the labor, but you're getting free social media posts as people share this content. So Wendy's gets cheaper advertising, but seeing that snarky comment doesn't make me want to go and get a burger from Wendy's. So there's a mismatch between what the brand's trying to do in terms of pushing reach and how it actually promotes the organization. Now, if you're a comedian, it's great to be snarky. Great to build a lot of humor into your social media profile and to have maybe someone that's managing it, make a lot of snarky comments and find people. You want people to come to your shows? That's a value add. It fits your brand. It fits what you're trying to do. It fits what you're giving value for. But for a hamburger brand, is there value in being snarky? Does it make me think your hamburgers are better? Absolutely not. So as a restaurant, probably not the smartest strategy. You know, there's probably executives sitting at Wendy's saying, this is great. Look at all this engagement, right? We have all these people viewing our profiles. Is that going to translate to more in-store sales? And I can almost guarantee that it doesn't. So you want to think about that match between brand, reputation, the services or the products that you're providing, and is there consistency there? Are you adding value in a way that is going to encourage people to take a desired action? Then we've covered this a couple of times. Should we give employees access to our social media profiles, or should we allow employees to post about us, personally? And again, there's definitely risks there. And you might have employees that have very strong opinions that don't necessarily align with you as an organization. And so if they mix their personal posts with business posts, there's definitely a risk there. We would go back to hiring, training, brand guidelines. Are you hiring the right people? Do you trust them to do the job you've hired them for? Well, if that's the case, then you should probably be willing to trust them with your communications related to your organization in their personal lives, because they're still a representative of you, whether they're posting it online or just talking to a friend and you never see it, right? That reputation can be reflected either way. So we want to think through our recruitment and our hiring and our training processes to make sure we have the right people in the seats, because we're trusting those people with our reputations in their daily lives, regardless of whether or not they're posting it to social media. Social media just brings it to our attention more often. It makes it more visible, but they're still having those offline conversations with family, friends, community members. They're still representing us in a way that's just less likely to get back to us if it's not online. So we should think that we've hired quality people, we trust them, we should probably get additional value in terms of them or allowing them to post online on our behalf or mentioning us because it's kind of free marketing in a sense, right? So that's it. That is social media management. Like I said, this would be a quick one. Just not as much value there as other channels, but hopefully that answered a lot of the questions that I often get from executives around things like hashtags and virality and how much should we invest. With that, let's move on to the next one.